Hello, this is Wilma Tacos, and welcome to the second video of Stories from Sector 8, the little series I do on the occasional Warhammer 40k games I get to play. This episode is going to be kind of similar to the last episode. The armies are exactly the same. I was going to say basically, but no, they are exactly the same. It was Orcs versus Chaos Space Marines today, just as before. Currently, my local gaming hub for 40k is a little dry, so there's not a lot of different players I get to play against, so it's usually the same thing. So this is an example of that. Orcs versus Chaos Space Marines. I was playing Orcs. I won by 1 point. The points were 6-5, and it ended naturally on turn 5. In Warhammer 40k, all the different game types have different winning conditions. Well, one of the winning conditions that is, or not necessarily a winning condition, but one of the game conditions that stays consistent is at the start of turn 5, and then from every turn there on out, you have to roll a die at the end of a turn to see if the game automatically ends, at which point you add up points to see who would have won, or who did win. Now that always happens. There's also some other conditions that can be scored in different wins. There's also the old 7 deaths condition, which is to table your opponent, which is what I did last week. Let me check my notes there. This is being recorded on the 24th. It'll be up on the 25th. For those of you watching this video wondering why there's not a regular video going alongside this, please watch the previous Heroes of the Storm videos or follow my Twitter so you know why there's not a video there. Anyways, it was a very close game. As you can hear, the point costs were the point values were 6-5 there in the end. I won by 1 point. And it was very close. Had the game gone on another turn, he could have ended up winning. We played 1,000 points, which is kind of a small game, but I didn't want to play too many points. Just fighting the same Chaos Space Marines over and over again, you know. So play a smaller point game and just kind of get the bug out of your system, and then move on with your day, and you know. I brought a very strange list from what I normally bring, and I brought one intentionally to not do that well. I brought kind of a bad list on purpose, just to speed up the game, so it would be over sooner and I could go on to doing other things. Because again, I'm tired of fighting Chaos Space Marines. It was the same thing I did the last game I played, and it's like I like a little variety, you know. I still somehow ended up winning. Let's see. I gotta go off the top of my memory here. What did he had? He had a total of 6 units. That's it. He had a unit or a 10-man unit of Chaos Tactical Marines, Chaos Space Marines, in a Rhino, and he had a mirror of that in another Rhino. So there were 2 units in Rhinos, and then he had a unit of 5 Terminators and his Chaos Lord inside of a Land Raider. So those were his 6 units. It was Rhino, Land Raider, and Tactical Terminator. What I had 2 units of 15 men's worth of Ard Boys. Ard Boys are like regular boys, but with a better armor save, but they're more expensive. Ard Boys can be very situational. If your opponent is specifically planning against you with a massive volley of shots, relying on the fact that Orcs don't really get an armor save, they rely on hordes, Ard Boys are a good thing to bring there, because he won't expect him to be needing AP4 weaponry or better to be able to deny you an armor save, and that can get really, really kind of scary that's exactly what happened in this game. His tactical squads just had bolters, and against regular boys, that's all you need. But against the Ard Boys with a 4-up armor save, he was not putting a dent in them all that effectively. I had 2 units of Ard Boys, both 15 men strong. I had a single unit of Gretchen, that was 19 Gretchen and a Run Herd, so 20 total there. I had a unit of 5 Death Copters, a unit of 3 Warbikes, and a unit of 10 men's worth of Storm Boys. So I brought a lot of fast, which is unusual for me. I also brought a looted wagon, which is something I've never brought before. A looted wagon is a heavy thing. It's a vehicle that's basically a gun platform. It's called a looted wagon because the orcs stole it from some other army, and then fastened it up to make it look cool or make it look orcish, and then brought it back into battle as an orc vehicle. They steal things. It's what orcs do. Let me try to think about how the various turns went out here. Sorry, forgive me, I'm quite tired. Turn 1, he ended up going first. I didn't get to steal initiative. He went first, and all he really did turn 1 was he moved forward with his vehicles and killed some grots. My turn 1, I put some wounds on his vehicles. That's it. I didn't pop anything. I didn't pop any vehicles. Didn't destroy any of them. My wagon missed, or my looted wagon had the kill cannon, but it was out of range since it's only a range 24 gun, so it couldn't do anything to the vehicles yet. For the record, we were playing the Maelstrom objective. Maelstrom is where you have randomly drawn cards that tell you what your various missions are in that mission. It's very random, and it tends to favor one player over the other, it feels like, in these games. We have the Maelstrom mission where it's you draw 3 cards, and at every turn, if you don't have 3 cards, you draw up to 3 cards, so that you always have 3 cards to try to determine what you need to do that turn and through the course of the game. He didn't score anything his turn 1. I scored 2 my turn 1 because I was able to. I got 2 cards that say score objective whatever, and I was on the proper objective, so I was able to get 2 points immediately in my turn 1. Turn 2 is where things started happening. His Land Raider did not pile out, but both of his rhinos did. Both of his rhinos popped out. And they shot some of my guys, but that's really all that happened. He didn't do a lot his turn 2 either. Then my turn 2 is when things got ugly. At the start of my turn 2, I immediately declared my Wa, because it was the right time in the game. Wa is a once per game rule for the orcs, where we can normally. When you play an army in Warhammer 40k, the phases are movement phase, psychic phase, shooting phase, assault phase. Or in the shooting phase, you instead of shooting your weapon, you can run, which is an additional d6 inches you have to roll. But if you run forward, or run at all, you can't assault during the assault phase. Once per game with the Wa, that your war boss declares when you play orcs, you can run and then assault. Any turn, you can Wa any turn that isn't turn 1. So turn 2, I'm able to do it, and I did do it turn 2. And what happened was the unit of Ard Boys was still 15 men strong. He didn't kill a single one of them yet. So 15 boys made it to combat with one of his units of tactical squads, which was 10, along with two bikes. There were 3 bikes, and he shot one of them. So there were 2 bikes left. The 2 bikes. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I had a war boss and a pain boy as well. I forgot to mention that in my army. I had a war boss and a pain boy, and the pain boy was with that specific unit of Ard Boys. So they were a 4-up armor save with a 5-up feel no pain, which is pretty hard to deal with. So 15 of them made it to combat. And when boys charge, they're 4 attacks base. That's 15 times 4, and they need 4s to hit and 4s to wound. And I killed all of them. He had a sergeant who called out he called out a challenge. I thought hard about it, and I agreed to accept with my knob. Or with my boss knob on the war bike. He's just a boss knob. He's a sergeant upgrade, but he had a power claw. And the guy had a power sword, but he needed 4s and 5s because bikes are toughness +1. And he didn't put a single wound on me. And then he killed him with the power claw. And all the other guys died. did just number of wounds, and I took barely any casualties there. As for the other units, things weren't. As for the other unit of tactical marines, they fared a lot better. My storm boys were on the side of the table with the other unit of tactical marines, the ones that didn't get assaulted, and my storm boys were pretty pitiful that game. Storm boys are boys with rocket packs. That means they jump forward on rocket packs. Well, in Warhammer 40k, when you use a rocket pack through cover, like moving through cover, you have to make what's called a dangerous terrain test, because think of it like the scene from I'm not helping you. I'm getting myself in trouble for this, from that Star Wars movie. I can't remember which one, where they're in the forest. I think it's Endo. It's not Endo, is it? Is it Endor or something? I'm gonna get trouble for that. And they're on and they're in that forest, and they're using the speeders, and they're going really fast, and it looks like they're going to hit a tree. And I think some of them do. That's basically what happens. You're moving really fast on a rocket propelled jetpack, and you may not be able to pilot accordingly. Half of the unit died to dangerous terrain tests moving over a pyramid, trying to get to assault. So they hurt themselves more than the Space Marines ever did, which is pretty upsetting, pretty sad. But it happens. A dangerous terrain check is you have to roll a die, and on anything but a 1, you're fine. If you roll a 1, you have to take a wound. And I rolled enough 1s, and they took a heavy beating, and but they made it to the charge distance, but they died during Overwatch. They did not survive Overwatch, and the tactical marines didn't get assaulted. My Grots were there as well, but they're Grots. They're not there to serve any real purpose. I tried to declare assault with the Grots to draw Overwatch away from the two guys, but he was smart, and he took the chance, and he chose not to Overwatch the Grots, and the Grots failed their charge, so he then used his Overwatch on the remaining Storm Boys, which did not survive. Now, so my Storm Boys were killed by that point, and turn 3, that's when the Terminators came out of the Land Raider, and that's when the course of the game kind of shifted. His Terminators came out, and because the Land Raider is an assault vehicle, they assaulted the turn they came out. They assaulted the other group of Ard Boys that had the War Boss in it, the other group that didn't assault the Tactical Marines, the ones that was just kind of hanging out, and proceeded to just kill them off. Over the next couple of assault phases, they killed those 6 Terminators, and the big guy, the Chaos Warlord, killed the 15 men from that Ard Boy unit, and they killed all the remaining ones from the other Ard Boy unit, which assaulted them afterwards the following turn. So that was around 30 Ard Boys that they were just able to put down over time. Now, I killed 4 of the Terminators. The only ones that were left standing in the end were the Chaos Lord, who had 2 wounds on him, which means 1 more wound and he would have gone down, and the one sergeant from the Terminator unit, who had lightning claws. The Chaos Warlord challenged my War Boss, or challenged my Orcs, and the War Boss was the only there who could accept, and I did, because I can't afford to have a War Boss not swinging. The way challenges work in Assault during a close combat, characters can call out a challenge against the opponent, and the opponent can choose to have one of his characters step up and take the challenge. If you deny the challenge, the enemy gets to pick one of your characters, and they don't get to swing, because it's said that they were sulking and cowering away to not have to be part of that challenge. So they're too busy being in the back, being cowardly to fight. So I had to accept, and unfortunately, while the War Boss is a very powerful foe, he was not able to stand up to that Chaos Lord. The Chaos Lord was very intimidating, and it took him 2 turns to do it, but he eventually dropped the War Boss. Not before the War Boss put 2 wounds on him, but he killed the War Boss. At that point, the whole tone of the game shifted, because he had these 2 Terminators left who were 2-up armor saves, and nothing I had left on the table was 8B2 anymore. I had 1 power claw on the knob on the bike who was halfway across the table, just picking up objectives through the course of the game. But if he tried to do anything, he would be killed. He would not get to use his power claw. So I had nothing that was 8B2 anymore. And you've got these 2 Terminators walking around with nothing I can use to scase him. My 5 Deathcopters never took a hit. Nobody ever shot them. And they were doing a lot of damage because they had the twin-linked rocket launchers, which are 5 shots total at strength 8 AP3 with rerolls to hit. So they were the ones popping the rhinos. And they were doing damage to the tactical squads as well, but they're still AP3. And the Looted Wagon, it died eventually, but it was still AP3. Funny thing about what happened with the Looted Wagon, he decided he had one of his rhinos was wounded, and it had already spit its men out, so he decided to tank shock the rhino into my Looted Wagon. And what actually ended up happening was when 2 vehicles ram one another, they both are considered hitting each other, so they both hurt each other. So you roll off, you have to roll to see what happens. Well, we both did a wound to each other. Well, he only had 1 hull point left, and I had 2 left. So he rammed me, and he did a hull point to me, but I then did a hull point to him and blew him up. So he suicided his own vehicle into me to just deal a point. So that was kind of funny. Once the other thing is, as I was saying earlier, with those 4-up armor saves on the Ard boys, and the pain boy in the unit who was giving a feel no pain, so 4-up then 5-up, of the 4s that failed. Once those guys got into combat with the Terminators, everything the Terminators had was double their toughness and at least AP4, so they didn't get anything anymore. So those Ard boys, especially the group with the Pain boys, did really well against the Tactical Marines, but they didn't do anything to those Terminators. I dropped 4 of them just through sheer number of hits, but I wasn't rolling that well, and any wounds he was rolling were just dead bodies. So it was those Terminators were easily picking up house once the war boss went down. The game ended on the end of turn 5. I had scored first blood for popping one of his rhinos, and I had gotten line breaker because my 2 bikes that have been out of the story since that first assault just ran across the table and got a rule called line breaker, which is if you're in your enemy's deployment zone at the end of the game, you get bonus points. Like you get a point for having the line breaker rule. So it was only because of line breaker in first blood that I was able to win, because the points were 6 and 5, and he got 4 out of his 5 points from that last turn, because he had like 2 or 3 cards that say just kill the warlord, and he did. So he got a bunch of points from that, where it's like D3, and he got the roll, and he did well. So it was very close there in the end, but there's not a lot more that I think was significant from this game. Storm Boys were killing themselves, rammed by Looted Battle Wagon, and blew itself up, which is still amusing. The R Boys against Tactical Marines, those R Boys did really well. I'm honestly surprised. The 4-up armor save and then a 5-up feel no pain on the ones who fail. Normally I don't field R Boys, but if you're like I said earlier, if your opponent is relying on you to have a bunch of regular weak boys just hoarding, go R boys, man. Bring R boys. You'll put them in a shock, because R boys can still come in they can come in the same number as regular boys. It's a much larger point cost, but they can come in the same number, and a 4-up armor save on those guys there's not a lot of weapons out there that are a lot of wounds at AP4. He didn't have anything that could deal with them. So they were chewing through that one. They chewed through that one tactical squad. The other tactical squad never got assaulted. The Looted Wagon has a strength 7 AP3 large blast template, which means the The Space Marines are a 3-up armor save, so they didn't get a save, and the Looted Wagon was doing everything it could to shoot that other unit, the Tactical Marines. And by the end of the game, there were two left in that unit. There were 2 left. They were still there, but there were 2 left, and they probably would have eventually died. At the end, when we called it, or when the game ended automatically, all that was left on the table was the 5 Death Copters, which were completely unscathed, his Land Raider, which was completely unscathed. I ignored his Land Raider. I did, because the highest strength weapon I had with the rocket launcher is at strength 8, which means I need a 6 to glance that thing. So I just outright ignored the Land Raider. It wasn't worth my time. So the Land Raider was completely unscathed. My Death Copters were completely unscathed. He had his Chaos Lord, who had 1 wound left, and the Terminator Sergeant. He had the 2 Tactical Marines, and I had the 2 bikes. That was it. So all I had was Death Copters and 2 bikes. And he had the Chaos Lord, the 1 Terminator, the Land Raider, and the 2 things. So if the game had kept going, I don't know who would have won. I can say for certain that my Death Copters would have played keep away with those Terminators for as long as they could, zooming around the table, staying out of the way. They would have absolutely done that. So either way, I was gonna be trying to run down the clock. I don't think I ever could have tabled him. And the other thing about those Terminators with their 2-up armor save is, just like me, they have a 5-up funeral pain. So even if they fail their 2-up armor save, they get to roll another die, and on a 5 or 6 they ignored it. And he was doing good on that. So it's hard to put those guys down without the AP2 weaponry. It really is. And I didn't have anything there that could do it. But I just barely scathed through with a win. Just barely. One other thing I'd like to bring up is, I'm not sure how well I brought it up in the other video, but neither player in this game used the Deep Strike special rule. Not just Deep Strike, reserves. There were no reserves. There were no outflanks, no Deep Strike, no shenanigans like that. In my opinion, the reserve rules, like all reserve rules, outside of Infiltrate, which I'm okay with, and Scout, which I'm okay with, are to me some of the worst, like very, very bad rules in Warhammer 40k. I don't like Deep Strike and Reserve, and when it's used against me, I mark it down. Like, I write down who uses Deep Strike and Reserve, because to me, like, I don't bring it, not really. I bring it on very rare occasions, and usually only when I have to with a flyer. And when I do, I let my opponent know that it's coming long before we sit down and play, because to me, I don't like that rule. So from here on out, for these videos, one of the things I've always written down in my notes is I'll let you know if there was any Deep Strike through the course of the game. And from my notes, which I've been taking for years, ever since I've been playing, to mark how the games go, you'll find that a lot of times the games that I have a lot more issues with are the ones where they bring Deep Strike and Reserves, because I don't personally deal well with it. That's all it is. It's a personal thing. I don't personally deal well with it. It's my Achilles heel. I don't have a good strategy against it. So when it happens to me, it is kind of hurtful. It hurts me big time. So I don't like when it's used against me, and I don't use it against other people. So I will be pointing out whenever that comes into play. But that's all I have to say. Another 1,000-point Orcs versus Chaos Space Marines game, and another win for the Orcs. But they just barely pulled it out, and I don't think it was because of table strength. I think it was just because I drew the cards better than he did. I just had a little bit of better random luck. That's all it comes down to. And really, that's how it is in 40k. Next Sunday might be a bit of a different story. I hopefully have a different story to tell next Sunday. I'll try not to bring Orcs, so that at least it's a different army. But thank you all for listening, for those of you who stayed this long, and hopefully I'll have another story next Sunday. Thanks for watching. Thanks for not watching, but thanks for listening. Thank you, and I hope you're enjoying this series so far.